Hey, Reality. All right. For this one, I wanted to talk about life as if it's kind of a game, and one particular part of it. Because, I mean, that idea is actually a really powerful metaphor. I mean, you can see it all over the place in our current day. I mean, with this talk about gamifying life, kind of turning every aspect of your life that you want to perform better in into a game. And one of those I wanted to talk about was this idea of perception and perception checks and like spot checks and that whole idea. Basically, your ability to kind of notice things that are going on in the world around you and, just immediately identify either the importance of them or the pattern that kind of is existing in them. And I used to have, just awful, awful ones. But in some sense, it was kind of like I was a game character and basically I was, spending my effort elsewhere. It's like you're filling out a character sheet almost. And there was really kind of almost a mental choice of like, well, I could, but if there's really something dangerous going on or something bad, my friends will warn me about it or they'll tell me what's happening, or they'll let me know that basically I should be paying attention. And the only worry is really that I'll be slightly delayed in when I will actually act. But the risk of that is that if you get really, really bad perception checks, then you don't even notice when your friends are like, hey, everything's going bad. And at some level, you don't even notice when the whole country or world is being like, hey, things are going bad. But then it's you go the other way, and it's actually kind of nice too, because it's like the philosopher where you can basically kind of go off and basically work and kind of be oblivious. And the obliviousness is actually nice because it kind of separates you from all those types of concerns. You don't notice, so your time and your concerns really aren't taken up by that kind of crap. Similarly, though, you go the other way. As I've gone older in life, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's kind of important to actually notice some of this stuff. Because if you let too much of this slip by, then basically the world kind of becomes a thing where you're at its mercy. You're always the person who's kind of acting last and noticing stuff last and, letting stuff slip by, that kind of thing. And it became really annoying because it affect women and relationships and things like that. And it's like, was that person actually interested? And you think back on it later and be like, oh yeah, they totally were. And I was just being oblivious and not even noticing. So then, you almost, it's again like a game character. You almost actively spend time being like, all right, well, I'm going to notice things more. I'm going to pay more attention. I'm going to, kind of read about that kind of stuff and think okay, well, what do these various types of looks mean? You read about social cues and body language and all this kind of stuff to try and get an idea. And then in some sense it becomes good because then you're actually like, oh yeah, hey, I did actually notice that look, or I was in a meeting and I was like, oh, I could totally read the body language of what was going on with those people. Or I could, tell oh, that person was subtly pissed even though they were kind of talking in a happy, smiling manner. And it actually pays off in dividends. It was really useful in management and things like that, where you would actually be able to say oh yeah, I can totally read the room, or I can read the people, or I can read the kind of subtle communication that's going on. And afterward you can be like, hey, is there a thing between you two that maybe I need to know about? And, oftentimes you'd find out yeah, actually they'd be like, oh yeah, actually we've either been working on a project that hasn't gone well, or there was a fight, or Lord knows what. But, you would actually kind of almost intuitively see that type of stuff just in the behavior of people in the room. But at the same time, much like being oblivious, it also has its downsides. You get high enough up in it, actually, it's vaguely annoying. Because just like the opposite of the kind of oblivious scientist, now you can't not pay attention. It's once you've seen it, you can't look away. So then it's you always see the pattern in everything. For example, with music, it's kind of irritating because you analyze every single set of lyrics that you hear almost automatically. It's if you've seen enough patterns and if you've heard enough music and kind of heard enough of these plot lines, then a lot of them are oh, it's that song is like that other song by the Stone Temple Pilots, is like that song by Nirvana, all this kind of stuff. And it's oh yeah, they're actually talking general themes, and you can kind of almost follow the history back of it in your head. And be oh yeah, they worked with them and they worked with them. It's kind of crazy how a lot of this mental network stuff goes. But, it's like Facebook or any of these other types of things. It's the more connections and the more points and the more nodes that you have, the more powerful the overall system becomes. In many ways, it's like humanity. If there were only a few of us, we're not really all that effective. But when there's 7 billion of them, then all the various interactions and the kind of waves of information, stuff that pass between all the people actually become pretty profound at some points. I mean, you can get these kind of random confluences and like black swan types of transfers of information, and suddenly, you get some pretty amazing stuff that pops up. Anyhow, all for that one.